And we're live. Uh, Thank you, everybody, for joining another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, December 2nd. We'll be following along the agenda that was posted in issue 294 of the NPM RFC's repo. I've copy and pasted the notes link enough times that you should all have it, and feel free to add yourselves to the meeting notes doc. Quick reminder, these calls and all communication on the RFC's repo and all the NPM repos we ask that you please acknowledge and that you abide by the code of conduct that we have there, linked from npmjs.com. And we have a small group today, but I want to quickly make a couple announcements. Next week is GitHub Universe. It's happening, I believe, let me just check here. I believe it starts on the Tuesday and we'll go through the Thursday of next week. So that's December 8th to the 10th. So we will be canceling next week's Open RFC call. And we will potentially be considering whether or not to do one more RFC call before the end of the year. We'll let folks know via Twitter and also in an agenda issue itself, hopefully a couple weeks before it would happen. One other quick note as well here, we continue to ship the latest NPM 7 releases, usually on Tuesdays and Fridays. There should be another release that happens potentially today or tomorrow. So as usual, feel free to get the latest NPM 7 and keep giving us feedback with by running the npm install command with npm @7 to get the latest v7 release. And I think that's it for announcements. Actually, one more thing to be mindful of. The Node project is running a binary summit for the next 2 days. So this is essentially a small sort of working group collaboration summit on the concept of managing and updating the different node binaries. And so I believe this was kicked off by James Snell. The issue that we're tracking this conference or this event is, let me find it. I don't have the issue ready, but I do have the agenda for folks if they'd like. I'll copy and paste that in the chat. We can leave that in the meeting notes. But yeah, folks, if they're interested, feel free to reach out. If you'd like to join this, we'll be discussing sort of the future of managing node binaries. I believe folks from Versal, I think it's Versal, the folks behind, I believe it's Next.js, are involved, as well as some of the package manager and maintainers are going to be there as well. So good opportunity to discuss, that ecosystem. Yeah, I think that's it for announcements. So quickly, if we want to move forward into the agenda here, we have the first item here is issue number 287, the RFC for add no hoist option for workspaces. I believe we talked about this a little bit last week. And it looks like Jordan and Isaac have just added a couple updates in the last hour or so. I'm wondering if we can poke Isaac to jump on. I'm not sure if anybody else has looked at this in the last week or so. I think the action from this was essentially that we want to do a deep dive on hoisting and strategies. Potentially we could do that before the end of the year. My only concern is that with holidays and with vacation time, I know that we're getting less and less folks joining calls. So potentially we might want to punt that deep dive conversation until the new year. I also wanted to, I know that I have the action item on my plate for creating actual RFC for strategies, which is sort of a spin-off of this concept. For this concept specifically would be for a flag for no hoist, I think. So yeah, feel free to add to that if you want, Roy.
Sure. Yeah, but I think early January is probably going to be a better time for the deep dive.
Okay. Can you just take the note that I'll create maybe a poll for this? Oh, looks like Joanne's jumping on. I'll create like a poll for this to determine a good time, probably in the new year for a deep dive on sort of strategies and or this flag. And by that time, I should have the RFC written as well. So here, I'll copy and paste the being notes doc for you, Jordan. Also noticed that you just commented on the issue 287. I'm not sure if you can provide any context there.
Was that the hoisting one?
Yeah.
Did I miss some discussion on it? Sorry.
No, we were just saying that this was something that we want to do a deep dive on. So we were planning, deciding to plan essentially like a meeting probably in the new year to have like a session on this.
I think that sounds great. I basically, I mean, my comment basically stated is I think that that hoisting is the wrong concept. I think that implicitly, that like implicitly causing all dependencies at the root to be available to workspaces is a bug farm and is never what people actually want, even though it's the way Node modules behaves. And I think that it would be really nice if workspaces came up with an alternative way to share dependencies that didn't also inflict that Node module's hierarchical implicitness on workspaces.
Right.
And then I think that no hoist and like in existing tools is basically a hack or a workaround to that flawed design, like flawed mental model that all the other workspace use tools use. And I think NPM has a chance to do something superior here.
Right. Cool. It's a good synopsis of, yeah, let's try to do the right thing. Cool. So moving on from that, we'll essentially take the action to yeah, if we can just note that we'll essentially do a deep dive there. Yeah, that's great. So moving on to PR number 279, the RFC for the default command, which I know last week Isaac mentioned. He had sort of walked back, I think, this concept or idea, and I think if my memory is correct here, we also decided that there was an opportunity for us to improve, and I think Isaac said as much here in his comment in the last hour, and I see that also, Jordan, you responded to that. That's essentially, there's an opportunity here to improve the default experience without having to create like a mechanism that can be configured for what the default behavior is when we see something that we don't, that isn't a subcommand. I'm not sure if anybody had any more thoughts on there. Jordan, I see you replied to Isaac's comment.
Yeah, I was just answering his question. Like, I think that there's only 3 use cases: the default behavior, run script, and exec. I can't imagine another one.
Well, yeah, right now, but maybe in the future there's going to be more. But yeah, from the summary there from Isaac, I think the first point is a very good point. Like, probably just tweaking help search to have a more sane behavior. It's better.
Right. I see, Christian, you have your hand up as well.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think what someone also came up with was like a shorthand binary like NPR, which would just be like a shorthand for npm run script. which I think is not yet mentioned in the discussion there. The question a bit is like, is it worth the effort? How much effort is it to maintain another binary?
Yeah, so that's a good good discussion point. There's actually, we may have talk about that like tomorrow or in the next couple of days at that binary summit that they're having, that we're gonna have like essentially in the Node project. Yeah, like maintaining in another binary. I'm guessing this would map one-to-one with npm run, similar to the way that npm or npx maps one-to-one with npm exec. Like we don't want to actually maintain a separate dep dependency here, like we did with npx. And I think historically the only reason why that was created, as far as I could find from docs, was originally because we didn't know if we were actually going to pull that into npm. That's why npx like became a separate dependency. But yeah, potentially shipping an npr bin is an option. I think that's a separate RFC though. And I think I've noted before that that's something that probably I'll take some time to bring to the floor and ask if it's something we'd want to do. We also don't want to start stealing all like the namespaces for potential bins. Like I don't think that makes sense either. This might be the one case that would maybe make sense, since people just tend to really not want to write the word run for whatever reason. I see a few folks have jumped on, and I'm just going to copy and paste the meeting notes again, because I know that Zoom chat doesn't usually show you history. So feel free to add Bradley, Jordan, Isaac, feel free to add yourselves to the meeting notes. We have a small agenda today, so also leave lots of time at the end here for any discussions or topics that may not have been put on the agenda as well. So currently we're just discussing PR number 279, so the default command. As I saw you added some notes there. I'm not sure if you want to speak to it at all.
Yeah, I did add some notes. I think the kind of the status of this implementation is very easy. Some pretty significant hazards that we don't really have great answers for. So really, I think where it's sitting is we should definitely just make npm help search a little smarter and have it show you if there's a run script option for the thing that you typed. That may just like make the problem go away and we can just kill this, or it's probably just going to sit in limbo until somebody comes out of the woodwork and says, yes, I really, really want that. Because essentially it's just sort of a lot of us trying to imagine ourselves wanting a thing that we don't actually need or want. So.
Yep. Cool. Okay, I think that's probably it on that then. Moving on to.
We can remove the agenda label though, and now that
yeah.
call is just kind of out there, and if it comes up again, we'll address it again.
Do that right now. So moving on to issue 275. So again, this is our RFC for the registry protocol. I just think that the last time we talked about this, there was the action item just to make this into a proper RFC. I don't think you've probably gotten any time in the last week, Isaac. So, but I do see that there's a status update. Did you want to maybe speak to the note you made it here about an hour ago?
Yeah. So the main thing is that second colon there in what you can see in the description in the title of the request for the RFC. That should really be a hash sign, just to make the URL parsing a little bit easier. But other than that, it's really no objections were raised about it. So it's kind of just a matter of doing the work to make it happen. And it's pretty straightforward work, albeit a lot of it. So again, I mean, I I'm not sure there's too much more to discuss. We just kind of we have the action item to write an RFC, and then we'll probably ratify it really quickly. And then it's just a matter of actually doing the work to implement it, which is non-trivial, but
For sure.
straightforward.
Roy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, did we got any word from some other of the package maintainers? Maybe we should poke some of them just to give
Once
them
I think the
heads up
RFC is there, it's probably a good idea, like you're saying right now, Roy,
Yeah.
to poke like Mael and Sultan from PMPM and Yarn, especially when it comes to like anything that's like a protocol like that. Like this is going to work similar to aliasing, right? It is.
Yeah,
as it is
essentially,
today.
the vision there is basically this will be what npm colon sort of desugars to. So all of the places where we're handling aliases will basically just have to handle account for the fact that an alias might also specify a different registry, and essentially treat it the same way within the code.
Awesome.
Right. Since you can have something that's like resolved with a name that isn't the name that it actually lives under in the package tree.
Yeah, I think this is definitely something we want to like move forward with early in the new year. Any other comments on that? Nope. Okay, moving on then to the last item we have, and then I'll open up the floor to folks that may want to bring up other topics. This is PR 273. So this is the workspace, I guess like V3, or the third sort of RFC around workspaces. I think this was a holdout from last week. We can probably remove the agenda label on this, right, Roy? Unless there's something new. Oh, I see actually Christian added a comment here in the last hour. Not sure if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, not sure. Well, in general, I find it difficult to say what is needed and what is not. I think Learner provides a nice sort of base set here. However, it's also difficult because we like definitely don't want to re-implement Learner, right? And some of the things I came across were like something like an init command, which would just like give you a one-stop shop access to initialize a workspace. And another thing I thought of was something like for each. However, that would not be config management. So this doesn't really fit here.
Roy, did you have any updates on this specifically or no?
Yeah, maybe some more context now that Christian mentioned. Like, we actually do want to re-implement some parts of Learner, but not everything. So yeah, one of the things that when we had the first conversations with Daniel from Learner, one of the things we really want to focus on is more on the publish workflow. And that's something that we don't want to focus on. So we probably won't touch that part for a very good time, I guess. But the more basic kind of management workflows, we do want to have some alternatives so people can just use with just NPM, right? So yeah, just to speak more into the details of that.
Okay. I mean, I'm definitely okay with using the rest of our time. I know we have about a half hour here. If we want to go and review sort of the, I see Isaac said, sort of doing a deep dive on workspaces today would be good since we have such a shallow agenda. I also want to just make sure that folks here have the opportunity to bring up anything else that would be more pressing.
I don't have anything more pressing, but in some future point, I'd like to figure out where to go with policies because we've got those.
For sure.
Talked about with other managers. So, yeah.
Yeah, have you been
Yeah.
speaking with Miles a lot about that, Bradley?
I haven't been speaking with Miles about it, to my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, so we do have like the, I'm not sure if you've seen recently, we opened up a new feedback mechanism essentially. So if you go to GitHub npm/feedback, it might be a good way to like kick off that conversation unless you have like something something like specific to maybe like the RFC process and or like the npm client specifically.
Well,
Is that what you're thinking?
I think the problem for me is we need to standardize across package managers. So I don't know if the RFC could work with that.
Sorry, I know what you mean by policies now. You're talking about like the work that you've been doing with Node, like for like the policy sort of schema and the files. Yeah, right. That's a little bit different. I thought you were suggesting more like registry policies, like unpublished policies, not policies at like the programmatic level.
So I guess the question is, if we're trying to propose a field in particular to package JSON, how would we get all the package managers in the same room?
So we've been quite active, or at least I know myself and Roy to some extent have been coming to the package maintenance working group, sort of as a forum that we find to be sort of like, you know, what's the right term for that? Like a
neutral common ground.
Neutral ground, and that's sort of where I think is a good opportunity to bring up something like that. I know that I think the recommendation is something along, and you can correct me or point us in the right direction there, Bradley. The recommendation is a field for like a package permissions or I forget the name of the field. It's like a permissions.
I have not proposed anything.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk to people first.
Okay, I thought there was some prior art or some work that had been done into docs.
There are some prior arts. I have not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know who did that initial work then. Sorry. I didn't.
Yeah, there is some experimental work that landed right around policies.
In npm, I don't know. In Node, I do know it's fairly
Node,
far
yeah.
down.
Right.
Right now, we're having requests for finding the exit criteria for it. So, yeah. Once that's established, they'll no longer be experimental. But I think without package manager buy-in, they'll stay experimental.
Right. So it's truly getting the package manager to adopt and respect like this spec and these fields that are proposed here.
In some way.
Yeah.
So I'll do it at the package maintenance group. That works fine. Thanks.
Yeah. If you start an issue there, and we'll definitely be there. I think the harder part has been trying to get other folks to join, like from Yarn and PMPM folks. So definitely willing to like coordinate on that. We're also, as you might have heard, like we want to like pull in before we like introduce something like a registry protocol on our end. It'd be good to have Mael and Zoltan from the other package managers essentially have a say in that. And I think it'd be good that we try to coordinate as much as possible. So yeah, appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, in terms of any other topics?
Yeah, I actually have a question on this thing around policies. I had taken a look at this and I didn't see much that that a package manager would have to do differently around it. I'm curious, Bradley, kind of from your point of view, is there some, I mean, it's entirely possible that I just kind of skimmed it and missed it. So I'm kind of wondering from your point of view, like what's the buy-in that you think package managers need to have, or like and it could be that it's sort of missing from this because you don't have that buy-in. I'm just curious if there's something that we could maybe get started
Sure.
on evaluating, like to make that more productive.
Yeah, I can. There are multiple levels of support we could look at doing.
Mhm.
Probably the big one is like there was a blog post on an incident about a malicious package today, and if you were to install that, policies could have prevented at least the access to the child process module built in.
Mhm.
And if that had happened at install time, it would have prevented at least today's particular thing. So really, we're talking about at install time, using this configuration file and updating it to match what you're installing. So when we're using npx today, it'll list what modules are being installed, but this would be a capability to list, hey, they're about to use these potentially dangerous built-in APIs when you install this.
Right. So it might be like a just kind of fleshing that out. Like it might be like a prompt before we run a script or a bin to like ask the user to approve the use of like FS or child process or whatever.
Yes, and then when they do that, the policy mechanism can constrain the ability of modules to be accessed. And so if for some reason in your package.json you don't list child process, you could not access child process from that module.
By default, or is that something that the app
By
would be
default, you
able-
don't get access to anything in policies.
So, but I mean, you have to opt into policies, right?
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
So
I
by
mean-
default, everything works, and then you turn on policies, and now only the things that people say they can access are what they're allowed to access at that
Correct.
point. Okay.
Yeah, that could definitely, I mean, I could, okay, so that does make it more clear then, thank you, where the package manager might get involved, because it'd be pretty disruptive if everything just stopped working in NPX on some version of Node, right? Because when that's released, we can assume nobody has policies like defined or whatever. And we certainly don't want to say, well, surprise, ESLint can't look at your files.
Yeah, this is a long topic. I think you should spend time
Yeah.
on workspaces. That's a better use of your time.
Better use of my time, yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, okay.
interesting for sure. And
Yeah, bring
I've
it up.
seen this before, yeah.
Definitely bring it up in the package manager or package maintenance working group. I think that is kind of the right next step. We've certainly, so we have had some, like ideas or calls for in the past, a way to define like, what things does this module try to do at install time? And there's been a little bit of work kind of in the security space around like, we install something in like a private container and that's very locked down, and then we check if it's like trying to access networking or file system or whatever, and have caught quite a bit of malware via that method. But what could be really interesting is like, I don't know, when you install something, it sort of halts and prompts the user. The downside is, okay, but we can't do that in CI. We can't do that when it's not a TTY and so on. And we would have to cache that somewhere to say, well, you've given this thing permission in the past, and now we don't have to prompt you every time you're running your tests or building your JS or whatever.
Correct. It is more complicated than just prompting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I searched quickly because I saw a tweet on this a while back, and this will be the last note I have on this thread, but I saw that you posted something along the lines of requested permissions as being a field, Bradley, which I thought was actually pretty nice. But yeah, we can definitely unearth like how this could actually play out. And yeah, definitely think it's useful.
Might also be useful to surface on the registry or the NPM website, like these are the things that you're going to be prompted for if you install this. I think
Yep. This is like web manifest all over again, like Chrome like web extensions.
Also, in the same way you can do npm ls or you can do npm fund, like I can easily see a command where you show for your dependency graph what is missing a policy entirely, or like what, like for license, you can use licensee, right, to say, oh, I want to see what in my dependency graph has a good license or a bad license, depending on my config. And I similarly could say, well, what in my dependency graph, like what is in my runtime dependencies that accesses child process, like, and it would also be interesting if a package could say that, like, that its runtime behavior needed certain access, but its post-install script needs different access, because some things are going to want that. Like, they'll need to compile, and that needs certain kind of post-install access, but then they won't need any of that access at runtime. And, being able to like differentiate that is probably also useful.
For sure.
But like auditing your graph essentially to determine where you need to go PR in some policy lists.
Awesome. Cool. So if we want to, we've still got about 20, 30 minutes here, 20, 25 minutes left. We could do a bit of a deep dive into workspaces. This is something that we've had hanging open for a while now, and we want to get started early into the new year with work around this. And I think potentially it'd be good even just to start like a HackMD doc, which I've got going here, and I can share about the proposed I think API and for I think what we would want to do is talk about how this looks and how it interacts with workspaces, and what I mean by that is and I'll share the RFC itself that was made by Roy, essentially running commands against workspaces and being able to filter those workspaces and how to essentially like what's the expected result and how does this look. I believe it was number 117. And I'll copy paste this RFC rendered for everybody. Here, I'll actually share my screen so folks can follow along. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah? There's nothing crazy sensitive on here yet. Awesome. So yeah, I thought we could go through this and see where we still have some decisions to make or feedback to give, since this is something we definitely want to like make improvements to workspaces starting early Jan, or as soon as we feel confident that we've gotten over a lot of the hairy bugs in sort of V7. I think maybe Roy, you probably have the context of where we've landed on this.
Yes, I could maybe pick up to some of it. The one thing I have on top of my mind right now from where we left the discussion last time is that Jordan brought up one point about groups and having like groups of workspaces together. And I remember Jordan brought the point that he would like to have a way to also define them in the command line, but that's something we were kind of reluctant to add any like glob pattern in the CLI, like would like to support it only on the package JSON. So I think that's one of the open-ended questions we still don't have an answer in the document.
I have my hand raised as well, because I think that in number one, it says it's limited to a subset of commands, but I want to be able to run any arbitrary command, period, in a subset of workspaces. And I totally get all the reasons why globs on the command line are problematic, but, and I think it's a good like consolation prize to be able to define hard-coded groups in my workspace config and then reference those on the command line. So if I do that, I'm going to want to be able to run git commands in each workspace to see what has changed, so I can see what's going to publish. I'm going to want to be able to run, you know, an arbitrary command that like, you know, audits modifies my markdown, my readme.md file or something like. So it's just not going to work if it's limited to a subset of commands. It's fine if you say that like there's 50 npm commands and only 20 of them make sense to run in work cases. That seems totally reasonable, but there's always got to be this everything escape hatch where I can do something and do whatever I want, but run it in each workspace, because it's the iteration, the for each that Christian was mentioning the other day, or the other, you know, discussion about like, that's what I need to be able to do is I want to abstract away, go into each workspace and do a thing.
Would exec essentially allow you to do that? If we
exec,
right, so like,
run, yeah.
So if exec would be supported, so npm exec be supported for a workspace in this, you know, does that essentially unlock that capability for you?
It's sort of like it does, but it's unergonomic, I think, to have to use npm exec to run like cat or a git command in each workspace, because I'm not using npm exec to run it bare on the terminal. I'm just typing the command. Go ahead, I can see Christian.
I think Git submodule does this with for each, and like you can put anything after the for each and it would just execute it. And I think that would be really nice here and would be exactly what Jordan wants.
Sorry, say that again, Christian. I apologize.
So Git submodule for each does exactly that. And I think something like for each, which would even be called the same as what you have in Git submodules, would do exactly what Jordan wants.
Yeah.
Git submodule for each.
It's called Git submodule for each?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used
Git submodule, like a space between the Git and the submodule, because like it's like npm workspace, right?
Yeah. So just real quick, Darcy, I think npm exec should be on that list, period. Like unrelated to this wider discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think separately, I like what Christian's talking about. I would love to bike shed the name, not now on this call, but the semantic is exactly, I think, what I want, as Christian indicated.
Mm-hmm.
So an example of running, let's say we had npm exec was the, you know, recommended way to accomplish this. What does that end up looking like? Is this npm ws and then the filter? I forget how this was spec'd out.
So it's yeah, it's using the options there. So it would be like -w and then no, just npm exec. Yeah, then the -w can go anywhere, right? Like, and just the name of the workspace or group of workspaces, right? And then whatever command you want to run. So, but I see
project.
Yeah, but I see the syntax Christian is talking about here. It could be more ergonomic to just have a quick way to run something in all workspaces, right?
Well, that's my question is how, with this syntax, how do I run up something in every workspace? Because a star might not be what we want to support, but that's the thing people would expect.
Right. Right.
So like, I think we need a command. Like it's nice to have these sort of filters maybe, but I think we need a command, like a top level command that says, like, do this in all workspaces. And then you limit it down to, you know, whatever we support there.
Yeah, I think it does fit well with the proposition there. It's just something more, right? Like an additional API so that it's easy to just run something across all the workspace. Right. Yeah, no, it might be the Darcy. It might be the 4H is a good name. I don't know. I haven't given it any thought yet, but no, just an NPM workspace 4H, right? Workspaces. I don't know what had I used in the other one.
So something like that.
I like that.
And honestly, we like the exact command that does this in Lerna is Lerna exec. So I wonder if npm workspace exec would be nice.
What is the similar thing in Yarn and PNP?
I don't know. I haven't used Yarn workspaces.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Some research is probably good to just to make sure what the community is already like used with, right? Together that data.
Yeah, so this essentially becomes, so if we did workspace for each, and then you ran npm test, it's like, is this not, still feel like it's almost the same as.
Yeah, the workspace config kind of argument we landed on the RFC up to now. It's good because it's just giving like the standard commands, like the feeling that the workspaces are really like built in now, such that you can just specify their name and just run a command in it, right? So it was more targeted to that use case and not so much in the use case of running something across all workspaces.
What if we name the argument -- workspaces and you let it be I don't know if comma separated works because commas could be in file names, but like okay. I mean, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because then if you omit an argument, if you just say -- workspaces, by default, it runs everywhere. And if you then, whereas if you constrain it, you say these workspaces, then you give the ability to, without supporting globs, it would either be a list of single workspaces or a list. It would be a list of either single workspaces or alias names.
Yeah,
right?
the way we specify a list in the CLI config is just specify it multiple times. So it wouldn't be a comma delimited. Like we don't need a bike shed on the delimiter here. It would just be -- workspaces equals food, -- workspaces equals bar, -- workspace, blah, blah, blah. So we probably want something a little shorter.
Yes.
Oh, -w. Yeah, I think people really loved it.
Yeah. So -w food, -w bar, -w baz.
And foo bar or baz could either be the name of a workspace or the name of a group.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then if I just did -w with nothing, it would run in all workspaces. Is what I'm also leaning towards, because then you've satisfied that case of the default is you just tack a -w and it'll do it everywhere. Oh, you want to narrow it down? Give it something like that.
-ws, just so that is a different name.
Yeah, no, I don't love that because that will resolve to -w true, and we don't want it to be both a flag and an array of strings.
Okay, I mean, is that hard to differentiate into? But that's like an internal npm thing, right? Like I think.
Well,
I'm thinking in terms of priority constituencies here. Like what is going to be most clean for users, both even the ones who have to put things in the config. But I guess maybe that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, and I think, I mean, we're bike shedding kind of the CLI design, and from that point of view, like, yeah, no, I don't. It's not good to have a thing that is both a multi-specified list of strings and a Boolean flag under the same field. We have a few of those, and it's horrible.
So taking one step back and maybe also don't want to derail like this, because I also do think it's helpful that we've even just uncovered like this. But in terms of doing things synchronously versus asynchronously, that's another like consideration that I'm not sure if we have currently, like parallelization, like is that accounted for here in the current RC? Is that something that we want to consider as like, you know, a flag? Like how do we want to approach that?
And that we can't even bypass that by restricting the command line to a single workspace, right? Because if it could be a group, then there's multiples. And I think that that's actually a really good point, because what I actually want when I'm doing this is I want it run in parallel, but I want the output interleaved, and I want the overall exit code to be intuitive based on the exit code of the individual commands. Literally the only two things that I've seen in the entire ecosystem that do this properly and reliably are Jest and Lerna. There's some packages like concurrently and parallel shell that are not reliable and do not work well. And like I have had them pass CI when they shouldn't have before, for example. It's a big ask to try and pull that parallelizable command running and output interleaving into NPM. But if we find a way to do that, that would really, I think, be the difference between like how delightful this feature is versus it's just a nice low level ability.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I agree. Go ahead, Roy.
maybe to just pick up the syntax bike sharing there, but we already did a lot of this work.
Yeah.
Like we had the poll before, and we have some documentation in the RFC there. So like we kind of decided to not go with the top level WS for this kind of thing, but nothing that is set on stone. But just also maybe be mindful that there is
it
some,
simplifies so much of like how we actually present this to users, and how to differentiate between like I'm doing a thing versus I'm doing a thing in a workspace or multiple workspaces. I mean, we kind of already have all the config machinery there. Like it's, you know, we can do ws exec -- all, and then that's okay. This is, I want to run it in all of my workspaces. Or
yeah, I can definitely see how it simplifies the implementation in the client.
well, it doesn't. It's not just the implementation. It simplifies the interface, which, you know, if you think about like I tend to use it as a proxy for like how hard is something to understand. I tend to use the like how hard is it to document, and if we have to go through all of our commands and say, well, if you do -w on this, then it'll run it on the subcommand, versus having to just document it in one place, which is like you're running npm ws. This is like, these are the subcommands that will be run, and it will run this command in those workspaces. It's like it kind of gathers everything under one umbrella. That from there we have npm ws is the command for doing stuff to workspaces, and ws can take this set of second arguments. It can run exec, it can run add, it can run ls, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Otherwise, everywhere we do anything, we have to check for a workspace config. So the implementation, yes, is more complicated. That means more bugs. But also the documentation is more complicated, and that means more confusion.
Well, and also if you modify all the existing commands, then you risk turning regular commands into things people don't expect to be workspace commands.
Exactly.
Whereas if you do it the other way, you can make all the workspace prefixed commands. When there's no workspace config, you can make them just do the thing in the current package. And
or
that's also unsurprising. Or throw an error, either one.
Yeah.
Don't use ws here. You don't have any workspaces, buddy.
Right. And either one is, I think, totally reasonable, but also totally possible at any time.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to be mindful of time, we have about 5 minutes left. So is there any other actions we could take here to clean up the initial RFC, just so that it's reflected, some of this stuff is reflected? I know Roy, you've been editing and keeping up to date with this. Obviously, like I've added that we need to add exec since it got added after this RFC was created. But in terms of the go forward top level hazard, just adding notes here, I guess.
Yeah, just adding some notes because I think this is probably the important takeaway from this last conversation. If we want to change the way we were driving the proposal there, I'd like to document it again because if you scroll back, is this beginning of filter? Yeah, that's number 2 there. You just scroll by. But I was documenting why doing that argument thing. But then, like, if we're doing it the other way, we should probably document the reasons why we're doing it.
I heard some comments, feedback about removing this note.
Yeah, it's definitely not a scientific thing there.
Yeah. Well, and so polls are great. I don't think it's a bad thing to do, but if we shouldn't we should take them with a grain of salt because when you're filling out a poll, you're kind of imagining like, what is the, what's the one that seems most like I would guess in my first pass here with it, which might not be the smartest thing, right? It might not actually be the one that is going to be the least hazardous or kind of the most intuitive when you're then going through and reading a script and having to know like, what is this? I'm looking at like a .github/workspaces/foo.yaml, like what is this thing actually running? It's not clear that npm exec will run against all my workspaces because there's a .npm rc file. Like we kind of have all of these, that specifies as some workspace commands. Like if we put these things in configs, they're kind of not clear at the spots where you need them to be. And I don't imagine that somebody filling out a poll quickly would have a full kind of appreciation for that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good use of our time here, I think. As I noted before, a few folks jumped on. Next week's actually GitHub Universe, so we probably won't run a Open RFC call, given the fact that the 2 time slots overlap. And I guess another announcement there is that our colleague Miles Borns will be doing a talk at GitHub Universe about NPM. So definitely feel free to book and carve out some time to watch his talk. And we will be for sure as well ourselves. We'll take away, I guess, these 2 action items. Roy, it'd be great if we can update this RFC again. It's definitely, as I've said before, something we want to start tackling in the new year. And so the more we can get, some general consensus about how this is going to be, how it's going to work, then, I think the more people are going to appreciate and actually start adopting and using it. I'm very interested in sort of the parallelization conversation, like how if we get it right, we'll make Jordan happy, and that's a good thing. But yeah, appreciate everybody jumping on again today. Feel free to continue to edit this talk if you'd like. I'll leave it open for a bit here. I copied and pasted the HackMD reference there in chat. And we'll be posting the meeting notes quickly after this. And appreciate everybody jumping on today. Feel free to keep giving feedback and open up RFCs in the RFCs repo. I'll talk to all y'all async between now and our next call. So thanks. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.